And you're very welcome to today's postgraduate virtual open day. My name is Colin Hughes and I'm the head of the Graduate Business School here at TU Dublin. And we're going to kick off this morning with a live panel discussion. And the idea of this panel discussion is, I suppose, to address some of the issues and some of the queries that we often receive from students, but also to maybe help to aid you in your decision making in advance of September. So I'd just like to introduce our panel members this morning. And we have Dave Kilmartin, who's head of the Career Development Centre at TU Dublin City Campus. We have Dr. Geraldine Gray, who's a senior lecturer in TU Dublin. Miriam O'Donoghue, who's the head of lifelong learning in TU Dublin. And Mick Quinlan, who's the head of SMB and indirect channels at Vodafone and a graduate of ours from a part-time strategic management program. TU Dublin. So you're all very welcome this morning. Head of SMB and indirect channels at Vodafone. And I'd like to start first just by directing a question to Dave. So Dave, there's many people watching today that are considering their options for September and looking at even just within TU Dublin, close to 150 different programs that they can choose between for postgraduate study. So Dave, maybe just from your experience working with students and graduates, could you tell me what benefits do students get from postgraduate study in your experience?
Yeah, great, thanks Colin, great to be here and welcome everybody on board. I suppose it's worth thinking about if you're considering further study. I suppose in the first instance is to consider the proverbial question, consider the why. Why do you want to do further study? You know, in terms of your career plans, how does further study potentially fit in with it? What are your goals, your personal and professional goals? So I think fundamentally looking at an interest level often drives application. So if you lean towards where your interests lie, you're more likely to, I suppose, work that bit harder and be more successful. There's a couple of other areas. If you think about some particular areas where you may need a professional qualification to go along a particular pathway. So for instance, law, social work, teaching, accountancy, engineering, you often need a postgraduate qualification to reach the professional qualifications in that given area. So further study is obviously the route for that. And we obviously in TU Dublin, we have plenty of opportunities around supporting people to become professionals in their given area. I think also another key area is if you want to develop a specialization in your discipline area. So given you've studied a broad business qualification, for example, and I know we've Mick on here today as well to talk about that. If you have a broad business qualification, but then you want to begin to specialize in a certain area, that's where postgraduate qualifications are really, really beneficial at postgrad diploma or master's level, be it research or thought master or even to PhD. It gives you a deeper skill set and knowledge set, which can give you advantage then in the marketplace. So it's a real, I suppose, lift up above it. It gives you benefits over the standard undergraduate qualification. So you're developing a relationship with industry, you're networking with the right people, you're developing specialist skills. So you're probably more industry ready. And employers look very favorably on that because it's a time commitment, it's a resource commitment, it's an emotional commitment to go and do that. So that says something about your attitude while you're developing the aptitudinal skill sets. I think another great way that postgraduate study can really serve us is you get many students who complete their undergraduate qualification and think, oh, was that really what I wanted? I persevered and I managed to get through the 3 or the 4 years, and where am I at now? Was it really what I thought it was going to be, or was it what I wanted? Conversion courses, and we have some great options in TU Dublin around converting to new areas. So whereby a conversion course allows students of different disciplines to convert into a new discipline. Broadly speaking, the 1 to 2 years in terms of the pathways, and the ones in TU Dublin are really, really industry focused. With a lot of, to make you industry ready. There's a lot of relationship with industry, projects related to industry, and you're networking very cohesively with industry. So that really gives you the leg up very, very quickly. I know some of the courses around, logistics, supply chain, marketing, IT, the MBA, and we'll hear chat about that later. There's also options for people in terms of longer routes into medicine, potentially into psychology, etc. So it's one way to rethink where you're at in your career. If you come to that staging post at graduation and go, what next? And I would love to go back to an area that I was really, really deeply passionate and interested in. So I
Sure.
suppose,
So a chance for people
yeah,
to reset in some ways, to either deepen their learning
yeah,
and specialize in a particular area,
absolutely,
or to maybe pivot into a different area depending on their own
absolutely,
values and their own
absolutely.
career aspirations.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Considering the motivations in the first place, and there is some good evidence out there. I was looking at a HEA survey recently about the salary premiums that postgrads um, benefit from in a way. If you look at the 2018 graduates, 43% of the postgrads earn between 35 to 69,000, whereas at an undergraduate level it was only 16%. So generally speaking, there's a salary premium attached
attached to
to
that.
those with postgrad. It'll obviously depend on area, discipline, and all that kind of stuff, but you
Okay.
are moving into a different sphere.
Yeah, great, Dave. Thanks for that. Mick, maybe just from a graduate perspective, because I know our students and our applicants will often tell us that it's really interesting when we put them in touch with graduates so that they can hear from people like them, so to speak. Um, you might just talk us through, I suppose, your thought processes in terms of, when you were trying to choose a master's, and what motivated you towards the master's you chose in the end.
Yeah, definitely. So I suppose with myself, rather than coming straight out of undergrad, going into a master's, I was probably about 8 years out of university. Now, when I finished university, I was lucky enough to get a spot in the graduate program working for the Dublin Airport Authority. So I didn't know when I was leaving college necessarily what area I wanted to specialize in. So I felt I needed to go work for a few years, figure out where I was going to go, but always had the intention to go back and do a postgraduate of some sort, but give myself the room to figure out what it was going to be. So after a few years kind of working in very corporate level business strategy environments, it very much became clear that my postgrad was going to align to that. Now I had a huge amount of learned experience from the 8 years of working across different corporate remits, but that was all very much my personal learning from it. I wanted to kind of challenge things that I knew and things that I assumed. So when I was looking at courses, I was kind of narrowing down the usual kind of choices when you're looking at the time, it was DIT, now TU Dublin, Smurfit, Trinity. And I think what really spoke to me was probably the personal experience of having worked with people who had done their postgraduate in DIT as it was. I knew one or two people and kind of quite influential mentors of mine who had actually done the program in DIT. So that really appealed to me from that point of view. I got a sense of the practicality it gave them. The more I looked into it and the more the requirement for time spent working in industry that was there for a lot of lecturers, it became very apparent to me that whatever the exact course was, that TU Dublin was going to be the place I was going to do it. Just because the elements of how I was working spoke to me. Now with strategy in particular, it did come down to the MSc or the MBA program for me. And really what I felt was I was looking to challenge things I'd already learned and had a lot of exposure to, whereas I felt the MBA would be brilliant maybe if I was coming from a very different function and I needed to learn a hell of a lot. I felt just the content of strategic management, and particularly I focused on the innovation stream at the time, that really spoke to me about both challenging learned kind of accepted beliefs that I had around how to operate, so really get that academic debate flowing, but also where I wanted to go longer term in my career. I felt it was going to give me the skills, the frameworks, and the kind of the knowledge that I'd need to upskill to go into those areas. And I mean, since completing the masters, I've worked in our product team and now moved into our channel business, and those have been directly because I've had the knowledge that I've garnered from the masters, which has really let me actually apply it professionally to my day to day.
Okay, thanks, Mick. So you've seen that direct application and a benefit from the postgrad in terms of your own career development and progression within your organization. That's great. Miriam, many people on the call today, similar to Mick, will be making a decision to potentially return to education, having been out for a number of years. And those people, I suppose, will be balancing, work commitments, family commitments, and a whole range of other things. Just in your role as head of lifelong learning at our Tallaght campus, do you have do you have any, I suppose, advice for applicants who, like Mick, are seeking to return to further study?
Thanks very much, Colin, and hello, everybody. So yes, I suppose first and foremost, once you have decided upon your course and you're committed to doing it, the first thing I would say is that across TU Dublin, we're here to help you achieve your goals. So once you've decided on your course and you decided you want to come back to education, then we're here to help you in whatever way we can. As a lifelong learner myself, most of my postgraduate study I've done while I worked full-time and had personal family commitments, etc. The advice I would give anybody embarking on this sort of an option would be to get organized, understand when the semester starts and finishes, when exams are, and then if you go down to a slightly, more what shall I say, a micro level on a week-to-week basis, when are your assignments going to be due, and how do you fit those around what your requirements are for work and for home? So you need to be a very good planner, and you need to make time for your work, your home life, and your study life as well. But my one piece of advice is don't let anyone take over, because it's a long enough stretch. Even a year or 2 years is a long enough stretch, and you do need to have downtime within it. So plan well, understand how the college calendar works, and then when you have downtime, like we'll say across the summer, etc., take advantage of that so as that you can spend time doing other things that you enjoy as well. Postgraduate programs in the main last 1 to 2 years, maybe slightly longer in some cases. So plan for the long haul, and that's a good thing to do, as well as to when you're going to get breaks and when you're going to be able to do the different bits and pieces. If there is a thesis within your postgraduate course, do think about how you're going to set aside time for longer pieces of writing, moreover than what you might have done in assessments, and giving yourself a space where you can work and have your materials laid out that you can actually go back to them. Because I find myself, when I'm writing large pieces of work, that it's nice to be able to have a space at home where I can leave my stuff, go away, do whatever else I need to do, and come back to it. So I suppose organization, planning, and then making sure that you do take the opportunities for the downtime when they come.
Thanks for that, Miriam, and some excellent advice there. I couldn't agree more in terms of someone who's studied quite a bit part-time as well. Having that space where you can concentrate and do your work and separate, I suppose, your study from your work life and personal life and so on. We do a lot of work in TU Dublin in supporting students. We pride ourselves on being very student-centered and to create not only a supportive learning environment, but also a very engaging learning environment where students are enjoying their study because of the level of application and the level of variety of learning and assessment approaches that we take. So, live company projects and case studies and simulations and all sorts of a myriad different approaches that we take to keep students engaged and then support them on a personal level.
And just jump in there, Colin.
Absolutely, Dave.
I would think to Miriam. Yeah, I just to reiterate from a career development perspective, I reiterate what Miriam was saying, and maybe one lens by which to look at all this is to think about your life in kind of 4 dimensions: working, learning, playing, and giving. And very often the focus becomes, if it's a very large work and learning, often the playing and giving gets shrunk. So those dimensions, if you see your life as almost a Venn diagram, and it's just being aware of that, because if it's drawing too much of your time and energy and emotional headspace, you can start to maybe resent the learning. So I think, as Miriam said, it's one of balance. And to be fair to yourself, you can only do the best you can in your particular circumstances. And I think comparing yourself to how others are doing can be a little bit unfair in yourself, because your life circumstances are very particular to you. So you work out the best routine and approach that you can that suits your life. And just one other little thing, I suppose, we often use this mnemonic of connect. When you're in the college, connect with the industry, connect with your colleagues, connect with the academics. Communicate, tell people how you're doing and where you're at any given point in time in whatever dimension of your life. Because if you start to hold things in, and they begin to fester, and then things can get out of hand very, very quickly. So that communication piece, both with yourself and to others, is really important. And I think, as Miriam said, the commitment. You need to look back without regret the following June. You know, if you start in September and you're finishing in June, I want to look back without regret that I left it all on the pitch, so to speak, to use a sporting metaphor. So if you can set yourself up and proactively think in that way and put the systems in place that will help you do the best you can, and that's all you can do.
Yeah, I think I could just echo some of what the guys are saying there with it. I know one of the considerations I had kind of about going back was very much, how busy are you going to be? Is it a good time? Is it a bad time? And I didn't want to be one of those people who was looking back in 10 or 15 years when I was actually busier again, saying, I wish I'd done it. So, I mean, there will never be a perfect time to go back. It doesn't exist. But I mean, in terms of how you can balance both, I got engaged, got married, bought a house, started 2 new jobs, did all of this within the 2 years while I was studying part-time. So everything doesn't have to go on hold. And there will never be that right time for it. There will never be the perfect time. So I think you have to be aware that it's not all of a sudden the stars won't align, that you do have to take it into consideration. But life doesn't go on hold because you're going back to study.
That's fantastic, Mick. I must talk to you about doing some time management lectures for ourselves. Fair play.
It's called less sleep, Colin.
Miriam, sorry, you were going to jump in and make a point
Just
there.
one final point, and I suppose it's very important. One of the great things about going back to do a postgraduate course or to go back to college is the people you meet, and the students that you meet in your class, the classmates, the peers that you find, the lecturers, they'll all widen your community of practice in whatever practice that you're in. And do reach out to those, as well as all the people that will support you from the university perspective in TU Dublin. Also reach out to your classmates, your lecturers, because it's that whole big community of learning that makes lifelong learning such a great experience. And, you know, to just echo what the others have said, you don't have to put everything else on hold, but do remember that you're not on your own, and that there are plenty of people to support and be sounding board for you.
Thanks, Miriam. I suppose lastly, the last topic we wanted to look at, I suppose, focuses around student engagement from a learning perspective and the nature of that learning. And obviously with COVID-19, we've seen a dramatic change in many cases this semester in terms of the learning experience. And I suppose we were lucky enough to be able to pivot quite quickly to a blended delivery model with much further, I suppose, concentration on online delivery. In fact, we had classes running that very evening when the university was forced to close. So, and again, that's been building out. There's a lot of experience in that area. I wanted to bring in Dr. Geraldine Gray on this point, because Geraldine, I know you have a lot of experience in this area as well, and having run fully online programs for over a decade now. I know that going forward, we're going to see a more blended approach to education, and then we will be focusing on face-to-face with online and so on, but it is going to be more of a blend, and we are all getting more and more used to online delivery and online learning. Could you give us, I suppose, experience from your perspective and any advice for applicants in that regard?
Thanks, Colin. Yeah, so we've been running online programs now, fully online, for 10 years. So it's quite a well-oiled machine at this stage in TU Dublin. And the feedback we're getting from students year on year is they're very pleasantly surprised by that online experience. They maybe came on board expecting it to be lesser than a face-to-face. And actually, with the technology that we have in TU Dublin, it is as good as an experience as a face-to-face setting. And I think, like both Mick and Miriam talked about the importance of making connections and connecting with your classmates and connecting with academic staff. And I think at postgraduate level, because the work you're doing is that bit more specialised, there's a lot more one-to-one interaction anyway with staff and with other researchers. And that can happen online, and because there's so much one-to-one, we actually get to know our students better than we do, say, in some of our face-to-face programs, because there is that much more kind of one-to-one discussions. And instead of talking to people maybe in the coldness of an office on campus or on the corridors outside a classroom, you're talking to people in their sitting rooms, and you're getting to meet the dog, and you're getting to know the family members, and it's actually a much more personal context for those discussions than happens face to face. That's kind of an interesting dynamic, or changes the dynamic in terms of your relationship with the students. So some ways you actually get to know them a lot better. And I guess the benefit of any content being online, or even parts of it being blended, is that work-life balance bit. You don't have to commute. And if you don't make the lecture live, you can make a recording of it afterwards, and so you've all of those benefits of having done online. So the feedback we're getting from students is very positive. But I suppose one piece of advice for those aspects that are online is make the connections and reach out, and we're expecting a lot of one-to-one and one-to-one contact with our students, both in terms of academic staff and other support staff in the college. So make those connections and don't let things fester or build up if you have any concerns, as David was saying.
Thanks, Geraldine. I think, as I did mention, we pivoted very quickly for our traditional face-to-face programs actually to online. I mean, in recent weeks, we've seen, live case studies that we run with companies. We've seen industry challenges where our students have been competing and winning enterprise competitions against other students. We've had guest lecturers and seminars from industry. All of this has been done online. So I think the tools we have available provide for that very interactive and very engaging learning environment. So thanks for that. I suppose in summing up, and to allow some time for some Q&A at the end, I suppose what we're hearing from our panelists today is, in making that choice now, really reflect on your own goals and motivations, what you want to get out of postgraduate study, how it's going to benefit you specifically, and think about, I suppose, where you're going, what your career trajectory is, and your own personal interests when you're making that decision. Seek insights from colleagues, from mentors in the workplace, as Mick mentioned, from academic colleagues here in TU Dublin. We'll give you very, very good advice based on your own personal and your own unique situation, and I think that's important. If you progress to your postgraduate studies, really find that structure. Consider the time management piece, the personal effectiveness piece. We've seen some of our students work very well early morning, some work very well in the evening times, and so on. So everyone has a different rhythm, different cadence. So again, find something that works for you, and find a space, as Miriam said, where you can concentrate and where you can focus on your study, and separate those different domains. Dave mentioned the four different quadrants there. So to make sure to do what, as Mick has done, to not put everything on hold at the same time, to try and find that balance between work and study and personal life and downtime and giving, and as Dave said, and it'll just be a much more enjoyable and rounded experience. As I say, we're here, we provide a lot of support in that area. That's something we want. We want our students to be very happy as they go, and we spend a lot of time helping with that. The area of
there,
connection.
Colin, again,
sorry,
just very quickly, I suppose in relation to the piece of research about the course yourself, I mean, there's a few good things you consider doing. Obviously, talk to graduates of the course. I mean, if you look at the alumni function on TU Dublin, I think we've 100,000 people who have mentioned TU Dublin's, formerly DIT or Tallaght and Blanche, on LinkedIn. You can search that database by course. So it'd be a really good idea to connect with people who have completed that course that you are considering, and talk to them what they've done since, and how they enjoyed the course. Research the modules in depth. I mean, I know the academic colleagues are very open to talking about the courses, so make a call to them and see, what are the modules I'm doing, what's the benefit of those, what's the purpose of them, all that kind of stuff. The balance between the costs and funding it. Can an employer, if you're going to do a part-time or even a full-time basis, can an employer help fund it? There is some tax allowances. Revenue have a good help sheet on tax. I'm looking for the word, either to tax incentives for going back to further study, where you can offset some of the costs of going to further study against a tax bill. There is some small grants, obviously means tested on SUSI as well, just to consider that. It may be applicable for some people. You also have the springboard options as well, which are very industry focused, and some of them are free. And the mode of study, as we said, and as Geraldine was saying, online is definitely the way we're going, or potentially the blended learning piece, so be aware of that. The time commitment, thought, research. And I think as you're going through a course, I think about you know, the first day almost being like the last day. So the way in which you're journeying through the course, to treat yourself as a professional in that area now, and others will treat you as a professional. So that connection with industry, projects that you're doing, if you can do a project that have some real tangible benefit for maybe a company you're working for, or a charity, or a body who's working in the community, that's brilliant for your CV. So I'd say to be thinking about your CV in an incremental way, slow, steady, incremental process. So build it from day one and develop your employability over the course of the time in your college. Obviously, making sure you're there for the learning key in the first instance, but beware of acknowledge the skills you're building, both curricular based and co-curricular based. I think that's really important, and the way you articulate those skills then in your CV, I think you can really augment the quality of your CV if you think about yourself as progressing from day one to day X when you graduate.
Okay, thanks, Dave. I think that's very useful. And one of the things there, just about, you know, enhancing CVs, a lot of students have been in contact with me in recent weeks, just looking at their options for September, because they might have been planning to travel, or they might have been planning to go into a graduate program, and we've seen some restrictions in both of those areas. So, and they're really just wondering, you know, how much weight the postgraduate qualification will have at an interview stage. And I know certainly I've spoken to many employers, and I've spoken to Mick about this as well, who's been involved in recruitment as well, to look at students being able to, I suppose, pull out some of those competency-based areas to be able to talk about, you know, the role they play in a team, their leadership potential, their strategic thinking, and some of these areas, and to give very strong I suppose, evidence of those from the postgraduate program that they've taken with us. So we spend a lot of time, kind of, as we say, doing these connected, engaged projects with both community partners and businesses, and it really gives our graduates something really interesting to talk about at interviews. So I think that's very useful. And that was the final point I was going to make, is linked to that, in terms of a recap, was around connection. So the importance of connecting when you're a student with your fellow students, with the faculty, and with industry, with future employers, and so on. And given that connection is even more important when you're in an online environment, because the future not only of education will be more blended, but the future of work will be more blended also. So I think that's particularly important. I'm going to jump, if you don't mind, just to some of the Q&A. We see a couple of questions coming in here. I see there's one question around start date for postgraduate programs. So the starting week for TU Dublin, the academic calendar, if you like, for next September is the 21st of September. I could be corrected on that, but pretty sure that's accurate. So depending again on your individual program of study, you know, you could be starting on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever it might be. So the individual program manager will be able to give you a better guide on that in terms of induction or orientation, and then when your actual classes commence. A question here about, are the modules that are on the website for the courses, are they subject to be changed? By and large, the modules that will be there will be accurate. The specific aspects of the modules are reviewed every year, just in the vein of continuous improvement. Every year we take feedback from our students. We reflect on things as academics teaching the modules. We look at industry trends and what employers are looking for. So there's a continuous review of our modules to make sure that they're as good as they can be. But by and large, what will be there will be correct. And again, it's this time of the year where a lot of those changes to modules are made. So it might be worthwhile following up if you have a one-to-one with the individual program manager or program coordinator. They'll be able to give you specifics on that. A question here just about, are all the master's courses exclusively face-to-face, or are some classes conducted online? So again, just mention on this, every university is doing quite a bit of work now in terms of figuring out what that blend is come September. Certainly for the programs that I manage in graduate business, our view would be that we'll be doing face-to-face supported by online, so a blended approach. And I think that's something that my colleagues across the university are looking at the moment. But again, I think that might depend on the nature of each individual program. So certain programs will have certain features to them. Certain will have more elements of lab-based work, of practicals and different things like that. So I think it's worthwhile really discussing that individually for the programs that you're interested in, where people will be able to give you a little bit of a clearer picture as to what that blend might look like for that given program. Just looking to see if there's any more questions here. The student experience at TU Dublin, what's that like? So I suppose really we differentiate ourselves at TU Dublin by focusing on not only equipping you with the best in class in terms of knowledge and research from leading academics, leading industry bodies and think tanks and leading organizations globally, but we try and bring that down always to a level of practical application. So we feel that our students benefit most from when we equip them with that knowledge, where they reflect deeply on that knowledge based on their own experiences and how they kind of, I suppose, articulate that themselves and how they apply that to real life challenges that we ask them to complete. So again, a variety of learning and teaching approaches to make sure that we're cementing that learning and embedding that learning so that lasts for people into the future. It's not a rote learning thing where you're learning things off for exams. You're really getting your head around things and you're crystallizing your thoughts and ideas about the particular area you're looking at, your own leadership style, how you work in teams, all of these areas that regardless of what discipline you study are going to be really, really important for you in your career going forward. And one of the particularly interesting areas that we focus on is the development of those, what people would call softer skills, things like presentation and communication skills, things like you reflecting on your levels of self-awareness and emotional intelligence, all of these things that are really, really important regardless of your industry or regardless of your role. So again, there's a huge focus on that in our educational model at TU Dublin. Just wondering if there's any more questions coming in. Questions about international students and traveling and so on. So I suppose again, where we have international applicants, again, they just need to look at, again, the delivery blend and model for them for the particular program they're looking at, and also to talk locally in terms of visas, and so that they understand the timelines on those things. And any, we would advise people to get here a couple of weeks early, obviously, if there's any self-isolation involved at that stage. We are hoping, obviously, that we're reaching a turning point with COVID-19, but again, we'll have to be guided by public health kind of advice on that, like every university. Just looking to see if there's any more questions coming in there. Blend between individual and teamwork, I suppose there's quite a bit on that within our program. So we would have quite a bit of individual assignments, obviously, which are which people get to demonstrate their own individual learning throughout those interesting assignments they do. And we would also have then obviously quite a bit of teamwork assignments, because teamwork for us is particularly important, and it's a particularly important skill set. So I think I'll finish up there. I think that's most of the questions came under those broad areas. So I'm hoping any questions we didn't get to, please follow up with us directly. I know Linda is moving to a new discussion now as part of the virtual open day. So I hope everyone enjoyed that. I'd like to thank our panel members today for giving up your time to give those insights. And I'd like to wish everyone the best of luck in terms of your journey towards your postgraduate education into the future. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.